here it is. Got it.
There you go. Make sure that you close that browser, otherwise you're going to hear us.
Thank you to all of our patient viewers. We had a tech issue, and people that know me would not be surprised. It was my phone and my login that was giving some trouble. But anyway, we are here tonight to talk about, first of all, to kick off season 2.
Woohoo! Season 2, ladies.
And you know what? We want this season to be really fun, because educators need some fun, informative. And so our motto is to be smart and sassy, but also have tons of fun. So we have some new elements for the show tonight. So how did this topic come about? You know, recently the United States Department of Education announced in one of their newsletters that millions of dollars had been cut from education research. And when I read this, I thought, well, who cares? Because, I mean, do teachers and principals and school districts really get that research? There's a problem with the pipeline. And so Faith and Judy and I were talking about Kristin Simmer's excellent article for EdSurge. And Kristin's title of her article is, "Education is still way too dense. We need more teacher researcher partnerships." And unfortunately, Kristin cannot be here, but she's traveling tonight. But I asked her some questions, and these were the questions I posed. Kristin, why don't educators know about the organizations listed in your article? Did you have to dig deep to find these organizations? Are there any updates to your article? This is Kristin's reply as of a couple of hours ago.
Ooh, Kristin's reply. Whoa.
The author's reply. She states, I think right now that educators with this is alarming. The educators with the most access to these organizations, info and PD, are, can you guess? Well-funded private schools. There are a few organizations trying to get this to public schools. She writes, Fairfax County Public Schools in Maryland is a leading example, and they are hosting an ed research trying to bridge the gap in a more equitable way. But again, if only the private schools really know about what's going on with research, I have to tell you, when I read Kristin's article, I thought, all these links, I never even heard of these organizations that she linked to. So I thought, my gosh, I've been an educator, a teacher for 36 years. How?
36 years, she made it, and she's still doing it.
Still going.
I've only been doing it for 2.
Okay, so tell me, so I was very disturbed that the US government spends millions of dollars in research, and what do we have to show for it? Faith, Judy.
So I'm going to jump in. So I think that this problem has been going on for years. When I worked with Reading First, this research existed in the 1990s. And here we are now, 2022, and we're still talking about the same thing. And it's amazing that research has not really transferred to classroom practical situations. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. So really, I really gave this some thought. Number one, I'm thinking that a lot of principals and administrators look at what's called What Works Clearinghouse, WWC, and they rate these programs. And if you were to go to What Works Clearinghouse or Evidence for ESSA, you will see that the programs that we would not think would do well have a strong rating, such as LLI, level literacy intervention, reading recovery, and others. And I think people really have to know how to look at this research. And that's why it might not be getting into classrooms. If you look at it carefully, you'll see that there are different categories like alphabetics, fluency, and general reading achievement. And if you look at, let's say, LLI, you will see that the alphabetics portion had no discernible effect, 0. Yet for general reading achievement and reading fluency, it came out to be a positive review. And when you take all these factors into consideration, you get what's called a composite score. And that's basically an average, and that's what gives it a strong rating. And then on top of that, they take K1 and 2, put it together as one score for all 3 grades. Now, if you really look at that, when are children supposed to learn alphabetics, which is really phonics and phonemic awareness, letter sound correspondences, in early childhood? And if there are no discernible effects in LLI in that category, in my mind, that's a significant problem. Yet, if somebody's ordering a program, all they see is, oh, there's a strong rating. Hey, that's one of the real problems why you still see schools that say, wait, there's research. I have research. It says it on What Works Clearinghouse. It says it on Evidence for ESSA. Because they're not really digging deeply. They're just seeing a rating. Oh, yes, there's evidence. It's strong. What do you think?
All right, so let me jump in there. So Judy Boxner here. This is going to be my 25th year with the New York City public school system. I have had such a ride, and it's only getting better because I have to say that New York City is shifting faster than the speed of lightning towards the science of reading, and really not looking only at programs, but very strongly looking at best practices. Because, every program is going to have strengths and weaknesses, but we realized whatever we were doing, it wasn't working. Kids were looking at picture cues to figure out words. They weren't really reading. In the early stages, a lot of kids were guessing. And now we've really shifted. Assessments are shifting. We're looking at assessments that are no longer like the benchmark assessments. They had some value. I'm going to disagree with you guys. For me as a reading specialist, one-on-one with kids, for some kids, they gave me some interesting data, especially with older kids. But right now we're using a tool, and I hope a lot of our viewers are familiar with the tool, Acadians, and it's really looking at that alphabetic principle, those 5 pillars of literacy instruction. Can a kid really decode a word? Can they slide through a word at point of difficulty and really know the syllables or how a word works to figure it out? So I think good things are happening. And even in New York City, August 10th, Chalkbeat is hosting an event that's talking about the overhaul of literacy practices. So I hope that, we start a chain reaction all over the world, whether we're in Australia, what other countries, guys?
Okay. You know what? And I
hope it happens, because I believe that we have so much information, so much research. We got to get these best practices in the classroom, not 5 years from now. The kids are counting on us now.
So, you know what? And I guess I would say, you're absolutely right. And you're working in a large city school district. But, how many teachers are at the table at the U.S. Department of Education with the research department?
I'm not sure too many. I'm waiting for my phone to ring. Here's my phone. I don't know if I should give my phone number on the air. Should I do it, ladies? No, I'm going to skip it. But yeah, you know where to find me. Find me on LinkedIn. I would love to be at that table. I'm sure Mary would love to be at the table. Faith, would you go to the table?
Well, I'm going to actually ask you a question, Judy. So you had mentioned, and this is interesting to me, You mentioned that they're using Acadians, which is, some people know this as Dibbles
Yep.
type scores. It's that universal screener, right? Whether it's Ames Web or FastBridge, they're using.
I'm also seeing a lot of math growth too.
Okay, so they're looking at that, but now what's in What Works Clearinghouse, they use Dibbles, which is, like Acadians, and they also use the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment system, the BAS, like you mentioned before. So now when you get that composite score with different assessments, right? And you look at that assessment, the BAS, the same authors who wrote the assessment are also the same authors of LLI. So of course,
can we just make sure that we don't use the alphabet soup, that we say the whole name? Because there are some listeners who have no idea what all these letters are.
So leveled literacy intervention, Fontes and Pinnell leveled literacy intervention. BAS stands for benchmark assessment system. And basically it assesses exactly what the program teaches. So if it's the same authors for the assessment and the intervention, well, of course it's coming out to be very positive. Now, wouldn't you think that people at What Works Clearinghouse would say, wait a minute, you know something, maybe this is misrepresenting the effects. Maybe we should look at this. And I don't think teachers are getting this information. I don't think they have the time or even think about looking deeply into this. And nor should it be their responsibility. I don't think administrators are doing this.
Well, administrators, a lot of them still love leveled literacy. They're attached. This is what they've known for like what? I started teaching back in 2000. And there was a lot of phonics, but it was shifting towards balanced literacy, and that's been around. So people got very comfortable with it. People got very attached to levels, and parents also got attached to level. What level is my kid? What level is my kid? But nobody was talking about what skills do my kids know? Can my kid decode a word? Can my kid, so.
Right. And so, you know what, we have a new thing for this season. The little shit that bothers me.
Wait a minute.
Actually, I thought it was shitty little things that bother
me. So you know what? Teachers, my best friends are teachers, and teachers everywhere have too much to do. They cannot be digging into research.
Right.
It's too dense. But guess what I found out? I found out that there are people called brokers who read research articles and then sell the synthesis, kind of like, what were those things when you didn't want to read The Great Gatsby, the big long
Cliff notes.
Yes. So brokers, there's a thing called brokers. It's a whole business where they read the research and then bring it and tell the school districts.
Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
But you know what I have to say? Thank you to the journalists. Thank you to Kristin Simmer and all the journalists who are bringing to light the things that we should know in the education industry. And so Kristin mentions these, she links this to her article, Deans for Impact, the Learning Scientists, Student Experience Research Network, and the Learning Agency Lab. Now, I've been in education for 36 years. Never have I heard of any of those organizations. Never.
So I've been in education also 36 years. Mary, you and I are the same age. Anyhow, I've been a classroom teacher. I've been a literacy coach and administrator. And yes, I did hear of some of those things, but that's honestly not the job of the teacher to have to make those connections.
That's right.
It really is not the job of the teacher. So if we look at this, this has been a problem for a long time. And I don't know if you remember, there was an interview, you mentioned a journalist, Emily Hanford. She did an interview with Ken Goodman, who was very big in the 1980s. I'm sure, Mary, you know the name. Maybe Judy would know the name, but she's a little younger. But, in any case, Ken Goodman was this constructivist and was all about whole language. And when Emily Hanford interviewed him, she was basically talking about the science of reading, and he defended 3Qing. And he even said, my science is different. Do you remember that? If you don't, it's, you could find it. And he said, my science is different. And at the time I was horrified, right? But then I started to give it a little bit of thought. And I said, you know what? He probably, and in all fairness, I'm thinking what maybe he could have said differently was, maybe based on what I've done, which is all observation, observing kids, that, you know what, when you talk about science in a sterile lab, not in the classroom, maybe that just doesn't really mean much to me. Like, your science is different. Doing something in a lab in a contained area where it's all controlled is different from looking at kids in a classroom and seeing behaviors, because this is a big thing. That's how we were all trained, in looking at reading behaviors.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what? I'm gonna have to jump in. That's a trigger. All right. I didn't see anything.
I'm gonna get my BS ready.
No, my bullshit buzzer's in the mail. Listen, ladies, my bullshit buzzer's in the mail. It's coming next week on Amazon. It's just a little delayed. Listen, reading behaviors, there's nothing wrong with reading behaviors, especially when you're showing a kid what they need to do. Because you know what? No.
Do it.
Listen, wait a minute. Wait, no, don't do it. I didn't finish talking. Give me a chance. No, the gradual release model aligns with the science of reading. In a gradual release model, you have to show a child how you problem solve. Let's learn how to do it together. And now I want to see that you could do it yourself. You need to show kids how to problem solve. Now, does that mean using the 3Qing systems? No, but you need to show children how to problem solve using what they're learning in isolation. Those phonics skills don't magically just poof.
Okay, but let's
let me get my magic wand. You have your buzzer, I have my magic wand. It doesn't just happen like this. It happens because we have to show our kids explicitly how to decode that word, or how to, problem solve. It doesn't just happen through the power of osmosis.
So let's get back to the research, though. So the research, because you know what? So in Kristin Simmers, again, shout out to this awesome author. She brings up some like things you can go exploring.
Oh,
like,
yes, I saw that.
So the Goldilocks map, it just came today. This guy is Andrew Watson. It just literally arrived from in shipping at 4:00 tonight. But listen to what he says. Like, people say, oh, this is research-based, or like, Ken Goodman said, oh yeah, this is research-based. He said, if you're gonna go buy a car, you would test drive the car, you would look on the internet, you would compare the car to others in its class, you would find out if it sold cars and what kind of performance tests it passed. But do we do this in education? No, because we have publishers coming in and saying, guess what? We have the science of reading that's brain-based. So guess what Andrew Watson does? He is an educator turned researcher. He's been in education his whole career, but he teaches people, how do you evaluate the research? How do you know as a teacher, is this bullshit or not?
Okay, so you're going to tell me the teacher.
I just want to jump in.
Go.
Okay, so that's very good. I'm glad he teaches everybody how to look at research. The teachers are not able to do anything. They don't have the responsibility to get the programs. So do I think everybody should know how to read research, I think it's very helpful. Obviously, when I brought up What Works Clearinghouse and evidence for ESSA, I'm telling people, don't believe everything you see on these database places because they take a composite score. They are using, numbers that could be not very accurate in terms of what you want to look for. So yes, should teachers know? Yes, but they are not the decision makers. The administrators need a course in this. People who are choosing programs need a course in this.
1,000%. And it can't take that long. We don't have time to waste, but it has to stem also from the top. It has to stem from, actually, you know what? It's a systematic issue that has to all fall into place. It has to be principals, superintendents, the people higher than the superintendents, the instructional leadership team, and the teachers. It has to be as a team. But it can't take forever. It's year after year after year after year. And they bring in a little piece here and a little piece here. And one person signed up for a couple of good workshops and a couple of other people didn't sign up for a good workshop. There has to be a streamlined system of efficiency to get this shit done.
Exactly. Judy, so well said. This is what Simmer states in her article. The education experts have to be transparent about the evidence that does or does not support their claims. And teacher programs, all you university teachers and university leaders, we know what works for reading. I just read an article, 140 million people in this country are low literate in America today.
Unacceptable.
Okay,
Awful.
but I'm going to throw this out to you. Let's say I'm on the side of, balanced literacy, and I feel that, you know what you're saying, okay, that's science, but I can tell you, I look at my kids and I know my kids and I observe my kids, and I don't buy any of this. I'm just playing right now.
That's going to happen. You're going to get a lot of teachers.
You're going to get a lot of people who say that.
A lot.
So, I also think we have to be very careful about being on the side of science as well and understand how people think. So I'll give you an example. So you know how we talk about multisensory approach, right? Like Orton Gillingham is a multisensory approach. Well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Multisensory is not evidence-based. And you might say, whoa, wait a minute. It works for me. I
don't know.
It is for dyslexia.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I
agree, Mary.
I watch kids and I know it's helpful.
Yes.
But you know what? There is no evidence. What the evidence is a phonological approach, not necessarily a multisensory. And
But for dyslexia, it is.
Swear up and down that that's something that's evidence-based. So you get this on both sides.
But you know what?
Yeah, but you know what?
I have to step in. I have to step in.
Come, Mary.
You know what?
Let's do it.
Like medical, like I'm not going to a doctor. I'm not going to a lawyer. I'm not going to a dentist who doesn't rely on science, a lawyer on the law. You have to be experts. Now, teachers have no time to do all of this. So it is incumbent.
Yeah, they barely have time to go to the bathroom during the school day.
Right. It's incumbent upon the state departments of education. It's incumbent. We shouldn't have brokers in between education and research. And
Okay, so what's the solution?
But you know what? This is the little shit that bothers me.
Okay,
If you're doing education research and you were complaining and whining that the US Department of Education cut your budget by millions.
Yeah.
Well, I'm, as an everyday American and an educator, I'm fine with that because we never, ever hear from you. We never, ever hear from you. And where is the publication that kind of like, here it is in a snapshot, guys. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're seeing. This is how we support our claims, blah, blah, blah. So research, but Kristin said she works for a very good research company and they have really good conversations and they want to bring teachers to the table, as I mentioned. However, I call on the White House. The White House needs to have teachers. There need to be teachers at the table who are current practitioners, who have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and they have to have a voice for the rest of us. Teachers are the ones doing the work. If I were a soldier in a field, I would look to the leader who has 25 years of experience, like some of the great leaders in our armed forces.
You make a very good analogy. So you say soldiers, and I feel like very often teachers are soldiers, right? And they have a lot of mixed messages coming from the top. So it's very confusing when your books are saying one thing, you have these leveled books, but then you're supposed to teach this way. It is confusing. We need the materials also to match what the science is saying. So, where is all the money? All of a sudden, schools don't have money. We need the resources. I know there's a lot of digital resources as well, but what do you want teachers to do? Go home and spend like 7 hours printing out 7 decodable texts for the kids? It's not fair.
No, and you're 100% right. 100% right.
It's not fair. And, I want to say on a positive note that I do see good things happening. A lot of colleagues on my team and so forth, and a lot of my teachers, they've gotten some really great training. Many of us have gotten letters training. Many teachers have gone to foundations training, Hegarty training, and so forth. But I guess the question is, how do we make sure we're all playing with an equal playing field, right? Well, it shouldn't be that one school does it this way and the school on the Upper West Side does it this way, and the school in Ohio where Mary lives is doing it this way, and in Long Island where Faith is, it's this way. We have to think of like you say, on a federal level, a systematic approach of how to get things done.
But they tried this. This is why I was bringing up What Works Clearinghouse and Evidence for ESSA. The whole point of those websites,
you're right.
The whole point was supposed to be, and even if you look on Evidence for ESSA, they describe it as they look for programs so that you make decisions that are morally and fiscally responsible. That's what's on the website.
Morally
and fiscally responsible. So basically, if they're saying use these proven programs and they have all these programs up there, what is a school district supposed to do? They are supposed to read research, but then they look at these these data clearinghouse websites.
That's true. You're right. Faith, I'm going to say you're right. I'm going to say you're right.
I am calling BS on WWC and Evidence for ESSA.
Well, you know what? So, I know you guys hate reading recovery. I was trained in reading recovery. There was good points, but you're right. So that was when Obama was president. There was a grant on the federal level. It was the I-3 grant under Obama. And at that point, a lot of us were being trained many years ago in reading recovery, and it failed. Okay, first, not for everybody. It didn't fail for everybody, whatever. I'm not going to get into that tonight. But as an initiative itself, it didn't help enough kids in the school system. So now here's this wonderful opportunity. We didn't get it right. Now we need to get it right. And it shouldn't be, what's today's date? August 8th, 2022, August 9th, tomorrow morning. We got to get this right. We have a great opportunity. And you know what? We can't lose another generation of kids that can't read. It shouldn't be that painful. It shouldn't be that many kids are crying, or that they don't want to go into a classroom, or that they're laying on a carpet because it's just too hard, or that they don't want to read. They don't want to touch a book. They don't want to look at a book. They want to sit and play a video game instead all the time.
So I'm going to jump in and say something. So these programs that we think are evidence-based, they are tested in a sterile lab environment.
Right.
Where everything's controlled, a certain number of kids, a certain number of times a week, a certain length of time. And of course, with trained teachers. And then all of a sudden the school adopts a program, and then, well, you know what? The teachers aren't trained necessarily. right? The number of days that kids are supposed to get a program, they're not getting it. And then the amount of time spent on it, they're not necessarily getting it. And so all of a sudden, whatever was said that's evidence-based,
Right.
it's not.
But what about if a program's supposed to be 30 minutes and you're told, no, you're only going to do it for 15 minutes?
Correct.
May I interject?
Go ahead, Mary, jump in.
Kristin Simmers makes that very point, Faith and Judy. Researchers isolate variables while teachers combine ever-changing variables in dynamic, messy human interaction with equal parts science and art. So this is what, bringing it back to research.
Good.
We have to have people in the education system and not teachers who are really trained in discerning what works. Daniel Willingham, he posted on my LinkedIn comment, I'm trying to get the word out. But until our political leaders pay attention, until the US State Department and all the state departments of education pay attention, that they need to know exactly how to decide, does this research work? Kind of like, again, when you go to buy a car, you do your homework, but we're not doing our homework. We go with
Can I chime in, Mary? We have a listener that just chimed in. We have Isabel Simmons. She just asked, what is the name of the article that Kristin wrote? She wanted the name of the article again.
Okay. So we'll post it onto our YouTube page and also the Literacy View Facebook page. It's called Education Research is Still Too Dense. We need more teacher research partnerships. And this was published in EdSurge.
And then we have another question.
Yeah.
What exactly does the research say about reading recovery? And this is Courtney J. I wonder if this is Courtney Jackson. Hey, Courtney. The RR teachers swear by it. So I'm just going to say.
Which is reading recovery.
Reading recovery, right? So it goes back to what you know, all right? If you've been doing something for a while, and you're basing something on an assessment that assesses what you do, and it looks like what you're doing is the right thing, whether it's cueing, whether it's, I know what you're saying, Judy, I know what you're going to say, but if it's looking at, let's say, an observation survey, and you're observing.
Just explain what the observation survey is for our listeners that might not know.
Basically, it's reading behaviors. It's Fontes and Pinnell use a form of this with reading behaviors. It's watching how a kid uses a book. Now, if their goal is to
how they write a sentence.
Wait a minute, but let's go back to making meaning, right? So if they make meaning by trying to do any of these cues, whether it's pulling from a picture or using the context, then they're successful in the eyes of a reading recovery teacher. So, but I know, but
well, let's not make this about reading recovery, because I think there's a lot out there about whether or not reading recovery.
Yeah, and not all reading recovery teachers have the same training. Many reading recovery teachers are now OG trained and trained in letters. So I think a lot of it is not which program works best all the time. It's also about what are best practices. And I think no matter what we're using, we have to all shift, no matter if you're reading recovery or science of reading trained or OG trained.
But is that fiscally responsible? Is that fiscally responsible to take kids one-on-one 30 minutes a day throughout the year to do a program that is not as effective as looking at, let's say, phonics-based?
No, so we could change that one-on-one instruction to look a little bit different, but it's never going to hurt a kid to take them for a half hour and work one-on-one with the kid.
I've had a lot of kids where it hurt them.
Okay.
Tier 3 instruction?
Where I had to do intervention, they already had it.
No, okay, yeah.
Debate reading recovery.
No, not tonight.
We're not doing reading recovery tonight.
All right, so Mary, can you bring it back? So you mentioned research, but I think what we have to come out of this with is a solution-based approach.
For
So
sure.
what are some of the solutions?
So the solutions-based approach are some of the things that I've already mentioned.
Let's
That
do it again.
educational leadership in our country, whether it's at the federal, state, or local level in education, they need to really get familiar with how to discern and read research and what works and how do you support your claims. I mean, I never heard of the Goldilocks map, and I'm so excited to read this book, but we have a long way to go. But why aren't, our leaders have to be educated. So
When you say leaders, who are you referring to? Is it the president?
Yes, all the way down. Do you know why? Barbara Bush has a fantastic website, and we're apolitical, but she has a fantastic website, and it shows you the literacy gap in the US and exactly where people are most impoverished. But she also goes into the research, and guess what? I call out the business leaders. Business leaders, we are losing trillions of dollars every year. Why? We do not have an educated populace who can read to pass the GED, to get their job, etc. And we also want an educated populace to participate in a democracy, because people who become readers are able to think, okay, do I believe this? Do I believe this? Why?
But it's also deceptive advertising. By having, like I mentioned, websites that say a strong rating for programs that we know have holes, that there are children who have not succeeded with these types of programs. That's deceptive. And I have to believe this is by design. I mean, there are people out there who have complained about What Works Clearinghouse and Evidence for ESSA, and nothing happened. They kept everything up there. So you have to wonder why. Why do these types of websites keep this up? And according to what they're saying everything is fine.
But you know what? It goes back to the funding. So maybe that's at the federal, I don't know who funds those organizations.
Well,
but
Johns Hopkins must have gotten some good grant money for evidence.
But guess what, guys? All of it is taxpayer money. So guess what, parents, I'm speaking to you. You have incredible, immense power. If your child or your grandchild is not learning to read in any school in this country, you need to start a coalition and say, what are you using? How is it being used? What evidence do you have to support that this is a good program?
What data are you collecting? Data. What does the data look like too?
But you know what? Instruction is where the heart of it is. So because
data is a key piece of it. And if data is not being kept, the program's not going to help a child, because then it's not responsive teaching.
Right. But
also, you know what? The parents have to start demanding, or the teachers have to start demanding. They need PD that's going to help them move the work forward. Not today, I'm going to do this nonsense, and tomorrow this nonsense. It has to start at the beginning of the year. School starting, for some people it already started. For some people it's starting in 2 weeks. The PD has to really align with the
PD has to be custom, because I was in PD with beginning teachers toward the end of when I left the classroom in 2019. Right. I was bored out of my mind. Plus, I didn't agree with the program or the philosophy, but you have to customize it based on your group. Like we differentiate for children, you differentiate your PD.
I agree with that, but there still should be streamlined systems and structures of how do we move the work forward? What is your literacy block going to look like? What is the science of reading? What are the 5 pillars of literacy instruction plus writing? What do they look like? What is implicit instruction? Yeah. How do we set up our data trackers? There has to be a system that nationwide it's running efficiently, because you know what? We all speak about social justice a lot right now. And social justice means that our children come out literate.
That's right. Absolutely. 100%.
Boom.
Absolutely.
Boom.
So there's a comment here, and it was Isabel Simmons, and she said, and pre-service also needs to focus on educational research so that teachers come out with a strong understanding of how students learn how to read. Right on, Isabel.
Oh, Isabel!
Amen. Beautiful. That is
No,
right.
but that's true. Also, when you look at the universities, it does start there. A lot of the universities, there's some that are aligned with the science, and then there's some that are not teaching best practices. So that's another broken piece of the pie. So how do we fix this pie tomorrow? I said that the date is August 9th.
So again, it's not something, these conversations have to go on with the power brokers in our country.
So
Teachers are not power brokers. Most principals are not power brokers. I'm talking to all these people at the top. You have the power. Also, big business, if you're listening, this has to be changed because I get there's a million issues. Climate change, gun control, all of that. But when we don't have such a huge number that cannot read in the United States of America, that is a tragedy.
So why don't we shift the conversation from the science of reading to the science of learning? So if we focused on what the kids were getting out of the instruction and focused on really evidence-based learning strategies, and we really looked at the brain and educated people about how the brain learns to read, which of course is part of the science of reading. And I know it's all semantics, but right now we are still fighting sides. Like, what science should we look at? My science is different from your science. I believe in
who is the researcher? A lot of us don't know who the researchers are.
Are they being funded? And by
have they ever worked with a child?
Right. Oh, that's one of the shitty little things that bother me. People who talk the talk and they have not walked the walk.
Can you ring your buzzer? Because that's bullshit.
Okay, and that is bullshit.
Love it. Love it. Okay, you know what? We're going to wrap up because we've been at it for a little bit. So yes. I want you to give our audience one little piece of shitty little thing that bugs you, but also what do you celebrate? So both sides, the yin and the yang.
Okay, so what I'm celebrating now is that I've seen a shift, and I would agree with Judy. And I think that school districts are in the process of changing. However, I think many of these districts give lip service to change. I think that sometimes they try to take the science and they try to fit it into what they already do, and they kind of do another form of balance. And that's what I'm afraid is happening more than we realize. If you talk to a lot of people out there, it's not like everybody is saying, oh yes, the science of reading, and they're all changing things over completely. What I see is they're changing a little bit or adding in a little here, a little there. And that's one of those little shitty things that annoy me. Like,
okay,
but yeah. Now the positive that I think I'd like to look at is we could bring it back and maybe bring people together by looking at how the brain learns to read. And maybe that could win over people who are steadfast in their beliefs, to move away from a belief system and more into something that's objective by looking at brain scans and what happens in the brain. That's my 2 cents.
Judy.
All right. So I think one of the, I'm not going to say shit. I said it again, but I'm not going to say it again. But one of the things that really irks me is that a lot of people, schools, leadership teams don't prioritize the foundational skills. Make them a priority. And if you have older kids that can't read, make it a priority for them too.
Yeah.
So don't give teachers mixed messages, get them the resources that they need. Make sure that the foundational skills are a big priority in those early childhood classrooms. And for older kids that can't read, there are books on the market for those children too. It's never too late to learn how to read. And then the positive, it's never too late to shift. Okay, there's many practices that I threw in the garbage. Where's my garbage? I don't know where it is. I'm not going to look for it now. But there's many things that I myself can reflect on that I did as a teacher that I've shifted. And it's never too late. And I have to say, God bless to New York City school systems. I have now received training that I'm so much more confident in how the science is changing. And look at me. I would have never thought here I would be in my literacy studio with decodable texts and working with kids with decodable texts and giving it a shot. Is it easy? No. Do I sometimes feel like shit? I want a leveled book so badly in that hand again because it felt somewhat more comfortable or easier. Yes, but just don't be afraid to shift. You have to reflect on best practices. You have to think about the science, and the kids are counting on us. That's it.
I know, Mary, it's your turn, but I think you said something so important. So important. I just have to bring it up. That whole idea of feeling good with a leveled book, because yes, if we're observing kids, they sound like readers with a lot of those books. They sound more like readers with those books when they get into the rhythm of predictable text. And we can't worry so much about how they sound. It's going to be hard when they are learning to sound out words. And
we're going to debate that again in another issue. I love you,
okay,
but yeah, we're going to debate it again.
So here's my final thought. The big shit that bothers me is that one of the biggest social justice issues and civil rights issues of our time is literacy. And it gets very little press. We have 1 million organizations working on reading, all these initiatives, but we have prisons with 80% of the prison population who cannot read well, who cannot read above a 4th grade level. It is the greatest equalizer. So when we talk about equality, at the base of it is literacy. So that's the big shit that bothers me. Why? Because not everyone in this country is getting a fair shake. It depends on the zip code and their school funding based on their zip code. And that is big time shit.
Yeah. But one thing, Mary, I have to chime in. I know it's your moment. Yes. But also, you know what? It's happening in wealthy zip codes too. I live in a very wealthy town and shit happens here too.
But you know what? Parents can pay for private tutors.
And they shouldn't have to.
Okay.
But we are busy, right? We're all busy.
That's another thing.
Okay, this is who I celebrate. This is the positive. Thank you, Emily Hanford. Thank you, Kristin Simmer. Thank you to all the journalists. And I've posted a lot on my LinkedIn page. Thank you for illuminating and really doing the hard work of digging to show us what's happening around the country. Because without journalism, I don't know where we would be in this country. We wouldn't know really the fact from the fiction. And I also want to give a shout out because Kristin Simmer said, Fairfax County Public Schools in Maryland, they are a leading example. So that is a public school system that is hosting a research ed event. Didn't know about that. So that is so maybe we all need to look to Fairfax County in Maryland, and they're close to DC. Share with us what works and what you're finding out and how you do this, how you systemize this process. But the reason why the three of us are together is because we passionately believe that the landscape of education can be better and needs to be better. And we should not talk about fiscal responsibility. These are lives. We are talking about lives of students in our schools. So So if you have to cut a few $1 million from whatever and make sure that every school has equal opportunity, equal beautiful schools and all of that, then do it. Because the big shit that bothers me is that we are not equal in our education system in 2022.
100%.
Well, maybe that's going to change
said,
tomorrow.
Mary. Well said.
Very well said.
So I think that wraps it up.
Yeah, can I wish everybody a beautiful start to the school year? If you're still on summer vacation, enjoy it. Go swimming tomorrow, go to the beach, read a good book that's not literacy related if you want, have some fun. And for those teachers that started, have an amazing year. We wish you the best of luck. We're with you. We'll support you. We want to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook on the Literacy View. We're all over the place, and we're learning with you, and we love you all.
Yeah, and let us know about, when it has to do with an issue, the little shit that bothers you. So we're trademarking that because it's teachers are the most important people in the field. And we want really mostly to hear from you.
Yes, and if you want to comment, we have a little chat box on YouTube. You could certainly put your questions there, even if you miss this live chat, and we will respond. So thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again.
Yes. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, America.